system is explicitly designed to melt away your wealth. On purpose. It is by design. 2% inflation targets are nonsense. Even when it was supposedly 2, it was more like 7 or 8, and right now when it's supposedly 7 or 8, it's more like 20 or 30. If you've gone to a grocery store and you used to spend $80, $100, you're spending $250, $300 for a family of 5, for a week, you feel it. There's a great index called the Chaplet Index that basically says we're going to calculate inflation outside of the government, and it's a basket of 500 goods. Those 500 goods are tracked across 50 cities around the United States. Their inflation index over the past 4 years is 40%. How are you going to meet payroll, right? Like, how are you going to operate a business in the future? We have to be able to calculate economic outcomes in the future to run a business. US dollar currently is set up to not allow you to do that.
All right, so next we have Will coming back to talk about Bitcoin payments. Will is leading a lot of efforts at Zaprite, which is a really cool company. I use them personally for invoicing and payment links. And then we're going to have more of, again, an open discussion around increasing merchant adoption in our local communities, because this is really another key gateway and important factor in increasing Bitcoin adoption. So give it up for Will.
All right, thanks, y'all. Here's something I actually know about. Politics is, I pretend to know about that. But by trade, I grew up as a computer programmer. I just happened to, I married my dream girl. She was a rancher from Wyoming, so that worked out. But I had to be introduced into that world. But this world is native to me. So I think this is a different audience than I'm used to speaking to. How many of you would say you're super familiar, like have a sophisticated view of Bitcoin? About half? A little bit more than half? That's good. Okay. So what I want to talk about is Bitcoin as actual money, doing payments, commerce with Bitcoin. I know that a lot of the narrative out there is that Bitcoin is digital gold. It's good saving technology. True. 100%, right? I know a lot of people that are skeptical about Bitcoin as a payments mechanism because it's deflationary and it's always going up in value. And then why would someone spend it? Which is a good question. I think the answer is because people want it. And if they have goods and services that they are providing and they ask for Bitcoin in return, then you're going to have to part with some Bitcoin in order to get that thing, right? So it's merchant-led, not consumer-led. It is the people that want Bitcoin. A lot of times accepting it as payment is actually much more efficient than playing an FX trading game of, getting dollars, buying Bitcoin, paying fees, transaction fees and custody fees and all those types of things. If you take it on a primary basis, it makes sense. More and more, we're seeing people have obligations denominated in Bitcoin, which means that, if you have a contractor that you have to pay in Bitcoin, then you might as well take it yourself. Again, it cuts down on unnecessary transaction fees, custodian fees, things like that. So let's jump into, I have some slides. I think I'm going to sort of loosely follow these. But for those of you that aren't super familiar with Bitcoin, I want to explain why someone might like to take Bitcoin payments instead of typical fiat dollars. The first is final settlement. The idea, there's this property of Bitcoin that once it is broadcast to the blockchain, once a Bitcoin transaction is broadcasted, and once it is mined, you have effected final settlement. That means you have possession of the money, and there's nothing that can reverse that transaction. If you're a merchant, if you've been selling things before, you know that effecting final settlement in USD is essentially infinite. It can be clawed back for any number of reasons. Credit card chargebacks are one thing, but there are also final settlement with ACH can take up to 30 days. I guess wires are the only things that settle almost immediately. Is that a lot of people are exposing themselves to an enormous amount of risk and fraud by accepting fiat payments. And so the ease of final settlement is one of these characteristics that is native to Bitcoin. You just get it when you use it. That is a benefit to you as a merchant. I mentioned it can be the best way to acquire Bitcoin if you want it, avoiding all those unnecessary transaction fees. It's also a good to have redundancy in payment rails. I would pose a question to you. You see a lot of financial censorship in the world in the U.S. dollar these days. I would say that it's reached its peak kind of with the Canadian truckers who were kicked off all fiat payment rails for protesting government restrictions on COVID. Do you see that getting better or worse over time? Right? Is that right now it might be gun sales and pornographers being kicked off fiat rails, and soon it will be MAGA people, and after that it will be anyone who said something wrong on Twitter, right? There's a reason for you to start planning for that happening to you and to your business. If you need to meet payroll, if you need to pay for your family, is how do I protect myself from financial censorship? And the best way to do that is to demand to be paid in Bitcoin, final settlement that can't be confiscated. All the different things I mentioned in the previous thing, the Operation Choke Point. I know this sounds kind of loony sometimes. That are the really feds running around trying to disrupt normal operating businesses from reaching financial or access to financial systems? And the answer is, yeah, it's not a boogeyman story. It's happened to my friends. It's happened to gun people who sell firearms in the United States. They were cut off from certain credit card processors. These are perfectly legal things to do that it is also perfectly legal to censor you from doing. And I would say that more and more activities like that are going to be considered politically unviable for big businesses and banks and credit card processors to accept, and they're going to kick you off eventually. We have a lot of ranchers here. Do you see a trend towards trying to demonize your business and meat in general? How long? Like, how long is it going to be until Visa says, these guys are boiling the oceans, and so if you have a direct-to-consumer business that's selling meat, your consumers cannot pay with Visa? I would say that is almost, I would give that a 98% likelihood in the next 10 years, right? That meat producers will be censored from financial rails.
Hey friend, if you're as health conscious as I am, then you will know what you put on your body matters just as much as what you put in your body. After all, your skin is the largest organ and you are absorbing things all the time. And so many of our skin products today are filled with toxic chemicals, from PFAs to formaldehyde to varying toxic and heavy metals, titanium dioxide, and beyond. That's why I'm super excited to partner with Ancient Health and Healing that is bringing health back into skincare. Whether it's deodorant or toothpaste, what you put on your body, in your body, your oral microbiome, your skin microbiome matters. At the end of the day, the dose makes the poison, and many of us are filling our toxin buckets up faster than we can empty them. And Ancient Health and Healing offers simple solutions with real-world ingredients from methylene blue to beef tallow. Things that are not only great for you, but great for your skin. And they're giving you guys a 10% discount with our code DRADIO10. That's DRADIO 10 at checkout.
Those are the main reasons. Let's go to the next one. Sorry, I don't even know what's on here. Why a business would accept Bitcoin? I would say, like, outside of like the financial censorship type of areas, I would say that treasury management is a big one. So again, outside of financial censorship, when I talk to local businesses in Austin, Texas, or in Cheyenne, Wyoming, or anywhere I frequent a lot, is a lot of people are struggling because they accept dollars and they hold on to those dollars because they have payroll and things like that, but the dollar is inflating at 20%, and they have trouble meeting payroll or even managing their business off of a solid financial grounding. So a lot of this is made popular by people like Michael Saylor, big business, right, who made the decision to put Bitcoin on their balance sheet in a very major way. But a lot of individuals have made this decision themselves, right? Their personal balance sheets are full of Bitcoin, in addition to other investments, and why wouldn't their businesses be also? I think big businesses are going to be the last people to do this because they have a lot of decision makers, there's boards, there's all these things, but independent proprietors, you get to make the decision on what you hold on your balance sheet. I would argue that not only is it very likely that this will save you from future inflation, like, you have a lot of peers, you have playbooks out there right now to show you how to do this, like from a tax purpose, accounting purpose, and from something that I'm doing is like how to accept Bitcoin on a primary basis. All right, I'm talking about Bitcoin here. Again, knowing that this audience was going to be full of different people than I normally talk to, I want to explain why I'm talking about Bitcoin and not all of crypto. And it might rub some people the wrong way, but I have an analogy here, which is, are the ranchers here, are you aware of Beyond Meat and their marketing strategy? So Beyond Meat, they sell what, soy gobbledygook that's just 50 ingredients of some nonsense that is likely to, like, kill you and all the pests in your lawn, but is marketed as food. And I would call this an affinity scam. It's not like little soy blocks that they used to put in your Chinese food. They had to make it look like a burger, right? Because people like burgers. Burgers are great. It's beef. It's good for you. It tastes good. And it has one ingredient, a cow, right? They weren't just happy saying like, oh, beef is bad. They had to take something that people loved, and then they had to attach themselves to that to try to trick people into eating their nonsense, right? This is how I view the crypto world in general. And I like to warn people about this because I don't want to be up here saying like it, not advising, but sort of saying that you should get onto a crypto standard or something like that. Is that I view most of crypto like Beyond Meat. They run an affinity scam that it's essentially, hey, Bitcoin? We're just like that. Except we're a foundation, and we created this out of nothing, and we have no monetary policy, and we're not censorship resistant, and we can reverse the ledger, and we have a founder, and we could be brought up in front of a government and shut down, right? And we don't do proof of work and expend electricity to mint coins. We have a centralized proof of stake system that does this, right? Is that if you're trying to dip your toes in this, credibility matters, right? And I would say that, like, if you've ever marketed a product and seen someone latch onto that product and then run an affinity scam against it, then you kind of know what I'm talking about here. And Beyond Meat is one of those, and I would say that most of the crypto industry is the equivalent of Beyond Meat, and you should be careful. That's just a little warning here. So my company, Zaprite, actually helps people accept Bitcoin on a primary basis. We do this through business invoicing, just like you would do with like QuickBooks or anything like that. Also through like e-commerce, if you're accepting Bitcoin online for a direct-to-consumer product or something like that. The criticism that we get sometimes in the space is that we have to build this circular economy. Nothing's going to happen until like you have obligations in Bitcoin, so therefore you have to take it, and then you can pay those off, or you can pay your taxes in Bitcoin, which you can do in Ohio, but you can't do in Texas or Wyoming. And I don't like this idea of a circular economy. It's a very complex idea. It's actually kind of fictional. Is that all a circular economy is a bunch of individuals who have made independent decisions. And once enough of them made those independent decisions, it starts to look circular. It really just starts with someone saying, I want Bitcoin, right? And again, a lot of people make that as an investment decision, right? Maybe as a hedge against inflation. But what they don't think about is that when their business starts taking it, right, they're that first individual decision, right? It doesn't start as circular, it starts as linear, right? Me and you, and then me, you, and the next person, and then me, you, and the next person, the next person. We see this happening in practice. We see merchants adopt us. For some reason, we have a lot of dentists. I don't know why. A lot of dentists take Bitcoin. Dentists are odd in a lot of ways, but apparently they really like Bitcoin. But I get calls not from the dentists themselves, but from the patients that say, are you the guy that runs this Zaprite thing? I just paid my dental bill in Bitcoin. This is really weird. And what I found from that is that those people then say, well, if they're doing it, I have a business that I run myself, I'm going to start doing it as well. In McKinney, Texas, up in north of Dallas, there's a Bitcoin meetup group where they hosted a different local business every single month, and they set them up with a point of sale to take Bitcoin. And now if you walk the town square of McKinney, everywhere you go, you can pay in Bitcoin. And when I talk to those merchants, it's about an 80-20 split at this point. Like 20% of their sales now are in Bitcoin, and they're just holding it on their balance sheet. And they've been doing this for 3 years. there's a lot of those local businesses that have gone out of in Austin or around the town square that can't meet payroll. Inflation's nuts, minimum wages going up, whatever it is. They're fine, right? They are saving as a business, not just as an individual, in a deflationary currency that doesn't, by design, melt from under you. So I would say, like, avoid thinking of this as this grand circular economy that has to occur, and think of it about individual decisions with people you do business with. Just a little bit of shilling on my part here. The way Zaprite works is actually very different than the way fiat payment rails work, or even other Bitcoin payment rails in the space work. So say you're a business and you sell online, you use Stripe. Stripe is not just a payment processor. They're a money transmitter because they take custody of your funds. That means that when you make a sale, the money doesn't go to you, it goes to Stripe, and then Stripe pays you out. That's another choke point that the financial rails have on you, right? Your payment processors themselves are also custodians. A Bitcoin native business can work outside of this system very, very simply, which is Bitcoin is made as a bearer asset, and we can develop payment systems where your customer pays you and it goes directly into your custody. Zaprite, us, we never take custody of funds, ever. We don't touch a Bitcoin, ever. Which sounds like, well, then what do you do, right? We are simply building the front-end interfaces for you to facilitate these different types of transactions, whether it's an invoice or an online sale or point of sale or anything, or a ticket or to an event or something like that. So the reason we built Zaprite the way we did is we wanted to expose the native qualities of Bitcoin to everyday people, right? Previously, I worked at Unchained Capital, which is a financial services company. We did a similar type thing, which is like custody. A lot of people just leave their coins on Coinbase or on Gemini or whatever, right? But again, you are not getting the native benefits of Bitcoin if you do that. And so we set up a custody model where you could have basically state-level security over your funds for a couple $100s, right? Zaprite's the equivalent of that just for transactions. So the way that works is that you come to Zaprite with a wallet. It could be custodial if you want it to be, like Strike or something like that, or it could be non-custodial. You could come with like one of those hardware wallets, right? You can hook it up, and then we have an API connection, and it just pulls out that invoice, and then people pay directly to your cold storage wallet. That takes out 100% of the counterparty risk in the transaction. You could also come with an unchained multi-sig state-level security vault, and the transactions can go directly there. Or you can come with your own Lightning node, and you can pay Lightning transactions. The point of this is that when you're thinking about a Bitcoin standard and how this is going to operate in the future, what we don't want to do is we don't want to recreate the current financial system where we're putting third-party trust all over the place, right? Where all of a sudden your money is actually just someone else's money that they, out of the goodness of their hearts and their reputation, they'll pay out to you. I think there are a lot of Bitcoin native businesses being built right now. I hope that we're one of them. And I think as you're, if you're thinking about this with your business, what I would encourage you to think about is, how do I affect final settlement and get control over the money as quick as possible in any scenario? Let's go ahead and skip that one because I talked about it. Yeah, this is basically just showing the product. I don't need to do that. Let's see if there's anything else. No. Okay. So what I want to end on here is just sort of like an appeal to those of you who might not be as exposed to Bitcoin as some of us. Is that I would say that the fiat system, it's impenetrable. It's really hard to understand what's going on at the Fed, how that affects you, and how that affects your business. But I think a lot of you will intuitively feel because in the ranching community and in the small business community in particular, you see the consequences of monetary policy before everyone else does. If you're a W-2 employee at Google, you just don't really feel it as much, right? You get your paycheck, you don't have loans, and you don't have complicated LLC setups and things like that. But you as an independent proprietor, rancher, direct consumer business, like, you're going to feel it very, very quickly. And the system is explicitly designed to melt away your wealth on purpose. It is by design. 2% inflation targets are nonsense. Even when it was supposedly 2, it was more like 7 or 8. And right now, when it's supposedly 7 or 8, it's more like 20 or 30, right? If you've gone to a grocery store and you used to spend $80, $100, there, you're spending $250, $300 for a family of 5, for a week, like, you feel it. It's not 7% inflation. There's a great index called the Chapwood Index that basically says we're going to calculate inflation outside of the government. It's been running from since like 2008, and it's a basket of 500 goods. That those 500 goods are tracked across 50 cities around the United States. They can show an actual inflation in every city, or in those representative cities around the United States. Their inflation index over the past 4 years is 40%. How are you going to meet payroll? Right? Like, how are you going to operate a business in the future? We have to be able to calculate economic outcomes in the future to run a business. The US dollar currently is set up to not allow you to do that.
If you're a health-conscious food consumer who's also very active, you know how big of a struggle it is to find a bar that is both convenient and nutrient-dense. That's why I was so excited when I discovered the Alpa Bar. The Alpa Bar is a meat-based bar that contains only simple ingredients, 100% grass-fed beef, tallow, and honey, and is both nutrient-dense and convenient, and packs a caloric punch of over 300 calories. For me, this was a game changer and is now the go-to snack and fuel source I use when I'm hiking, camping, hunting, skiing, or doing anything in the outdoors and I don't have the resources to cook a full meal. The Alpa Bar is made proudly in Colorado and only uses locally sourced meat. JJ and Rob are also extremely based and accept Bitcoin for payment. I highly recommend you check out the Alpa Bar for any time you need a nutrient-dense and convenient snack on the go. Check them out at eatalpa.com and use code DRadio5 at checkout to get a 5% discount. And if you pay in Bitcoin, you can get an additional discount on top of that. That's eataupa.com and use code DRadio5 at checkout.
So, if you're convinced by that, take a look at Zaprite. Take a look at all these great Bitcoin companies. Be careful of the Beyond Meats of the crypto world. And yeah, we can talk about it. That's all I have to say. Sure.
Thank you. Do you have an API or a bolt-on for a Shopify store? Because we've spent all this time and energy building a Shopify website to sell our beef, and I hate to throw it out the window.
Sure. Yeah. So right now we have an API. If you're doing like your own stuff, we're on WooCommerce. Shopify is a very closed ecosystem. We're talking with them. They used to be open so there are some crypto and Bitcoin payment rails on Shopify today. We actually talked to them on Thursday, and we're slow playing it. Like, they haven't seen a lot of success with some of the payment platforms or the payment gateways on their platform, like Coinbase Commerce, for instance. But they don't have a sophisticated view of this. Coinbase Commerce, for instance, you can't pay with Bitcoin. You can't settle in Bitcoin. There's one way to pay with Bitcoin. If a Coinbase customer is paying you, they can use their Bitcoin. But I couldn't just pay from any wallet. And then it always settles in USDC, their scam stablecoin, right? So they don't know how to differentiate us from them yet. It's the same thing with, like, they have Solana Pay on there or something like that. It's nonsense. So we're working on it. They're actually being very open. They're not like mean to us or anything like that, but it's going to take a little bit of time to be on Shopify. We're going to be on Wix in about 3 months. We're on WooCommerce right now, BigCommerce in like about a month, Wix, Squarespace, those are more open. Shopify, I know, is great. I love it, but it's going to take a little bit more time. Yes?
At what point do on-chain fees break your business?
Well, never. So we do on-chain and Lightning. We'll also support Fediment. Right now, the split in payments is about 50% on-chain and 50% Lightning. For those of you that don't know, on-chain is just the open Bitcoin blockchain. It settles immediately. Those fees fluctuate. They can be 50 cents or they can be $20, right? And it's just about competition over or they could be $100. And in the future, I expect them to be thousands of dollars, and that will be a welcome thing for the network. What that means is that you have to then go to second layers of Bitcoin. The most prominent one right now is Lightning. Lightning is basically a multi-sig transaction on the Bitcoin base layer where you lock up funds from the base layer. You can transact as many times as you can transact millions of times at very, very low fees, and then it would settle, a day, a week, a month later, depending on the fee environment. So right now, for smaller transactions, if someone's selling a hat for $20, they use the Lightning Network. If they're invoicing for 2 months of construction work, for 25 grand, 50 grand, whatever it is, they'll settle on chain. If I have someone selling cars, which we do out in Fresno, California, like exotic, $200,000 cars and stuff like that, they do on-chain payments, right? When we have people selling spices, little jars of spices on WooCommerce, they do Lightning. One other thing I would say is that I'm realistic about this all. Is people still have to take dollars, right? So we also integrate with all the major fiat platforms so that you can have a checkout experience for customers where they can pay in Bitcoin or fiat. So we have Stripe, Square, Venmo, PayPal, all that type of stuff too. I'm not trying to be completely crazy up here, but I think it's a transition type thing, and the fee environment is a big part of that, and it's going to be Lightning and Fedimints and things like that on top of on-chain.
As far as taxes go and how the cost basis accounting and stuff, is that right?
So we give you everything you could possibly need. So you have these CSV downloads, and we also have webhooks and APIs that you can put directly into QuickBooks, NetSuite, whatever accounting system you use. So you have your cost basis of what you got. You have the exchange rates. You have the price of the product. You have all the different things. Even if there's a gap, but if it's an on-chain payment of what was the price when it was paid and what was settled in, we have all that laid out for you. We work with Satoshi Pacchioli, which is an accounting group that specializes in this, and they helped us build basically our accounting spreadsheet for this. And then we're going to do primary integrations first with QuickBooks.
When and how will Zaprite work with point of sale?
With point of sale, yeah. So good question. We're building a very dumbed down version of point of sale right now. Our general strategy is not that we want to be the center place of e-commerce. We want to integrate with Shopify and WooCommerce. We don't want to be website builders, and so we just want to be the checkout. The same thing is true on point of sale. So we're going to build a really simple one. There's keypad entry, turn around, pay a QR code, done, right? And then we're going to be integrating with the bigger point of sale systems. So that's Square, Jack Dorsey's point of sale, Clover, Toast, things like that. Most of them are closed down. It's just going to be one by one. We usually, like with the e-commerce stuff, it's just every month we add a new one, right? And we'll hopefully cover all the bases in a year. But in the meantime, if you're experimenting with this or something like that, we have a very simple, dumbed down version of that you can try out. Yeah.
Does he have a wide range of products?
Very surprisingly. Yeah. Name a business and we have it, right? Dentist was weird just because we have so many of them. I was surprised, but I didn't go out thinking I was building a point of sale system for dentists. But look, there's a real answer to that, which is most dental practices are owned by single individuals or partnerships, where decisions like accepting Bitcoin can be made on a it's an easier process, right? And so independent proprietors are our bread and butter right now. We do have some bigger businesses using us for sure, but it's just harder for them to get it through the boardroom. So anything from, we have people selling spices and food to dental work to contractors doing construction, contractors doing web design. We have businesses like mining, a lot of Bitcoin mining companies that are either both on the services side and on selling equipment side use us. So it really spans like the whole gamut. Independent contractors, especially because our invoicing product was the first product that we launched. That's probably our biggest group right now, but the e-commerce group is starting to eclipse that. And point of sale will be next because that's what we're focused on right now.
All right, I think next we want to like open it up a bit to talking. I mean, this prefaces it exactly. How do we increase Bitcoin circular economies in our local communities, right? We have more options now. We have, more knowledge about Bitcoin, but there's still really not a lot of circular use going on, and that's for a few reasons. So I kind of want to, maybe I'll ask Will the question, but I also encourage the audience, like chime in with your answers, your, perspective on how do we increase Bitcoin merchant adoption and circular economy here in Wyoming or wherever you live. A lot of folks here have been down to El Salvador. It's a cool case study example. So how do we take learnings and bring it back to here? Is it a consumer-driven demand? Is it a merchant issue? What do you think, Will?
I think it very much is a merchant-driven issue. In my experience, people that have Bitcoin are not going to just choose to give it up. If they have the choice of, I can pay in my melting dollars or I can pay in Bitcoin, they're going to choose their melting dollars to get rid of. Now, also, money's fungible. I know that that's a little bit of a mental gymnastics game, but that seems to be true. It's people demanding to be paid in Bitcoin. Like, our strategy is to focus on merchant experience because if they're not demanding Bitcoin, people aren't going to pay it. Now, I think it goes even further back than that, which is the first question a business has to ask is like, if I have Bitcoin, how do I keep it safe? So like custody is the first question. Like, how do I custody this Bitcoin? That was the first company I worked on, Unchained, right? Help people custody Bitcoin in a Bitcoin native way, right? Once that problem is solved, then you can open up the doors. And it's not just Unchained. There's dozens of companies that can help you custody Bitcoin. And so I consider that problem to be advanced enough now to enter a new phase of Bitcoin, which is like, if I can keep it safe, then I'm more likely to want to accept it on a primary basis. Now, we need the tools to accept Bitcoin. So like Zaprite's getting there. It's not, I would say like for certain use cases, it's easier than fiat payment rails. For certain use cases, it doesn't even exist yet. We're going to have to build those out. So the challenge I would say for everyone here is I would say like, what would you rather do? Like earn dollars, go to Coinbase or go to River or something like that, exchange those dollars for Bitcoin, come back in, or would you rather just have someone zap you Bitcoin in a second and it's just in your cold storage? I've made a decision on that. I'm curious what other people think.
Any comments, questions?
You don't have to KYC your customer, but you probably get KYC'd on those $10,000 transactions. Yeah. Yeah. Like, for instance, Zaprite, we don't KYC our customers. And the reason is we're not a money transmitter, right? And so, like, it's none of our business. We don't take custody. That's not part of the thing. Like, Stripe would have to KYC themselves and their customers because they are a money transmitter. It is. That and taxes. Yeah. Well, in Bitcoin, there's two things on that. Is like, it's the person paying you that has the tax burden, right? The person paying you is spending Bitcoin that they have a cost basis for. They might owe taxes or they might have a deduction, basically. You don't have an immediate tax burden as you accept the Bitcoin. It depends on what you do with it, right? And so I would say as a merchant accepting Bitcoin, you're actually in a pretty great space to accept Bitcoin because you don't have a lot of those complications right away. Now, again, you're going to have a problem eventually. If you're accepting Bitcoin and you hold on your balance sheet enough, you're going to be way over allocated to Bitcoin within, usually 6 months to a year. But yeah.
And KYC, for those who are not familiar, is know your customer, so it's just tying to your personal identity.
Yeah, Bank Secrecy Act. No. Yeah, unless you yourself are a money transmitter or a money services business.
So Joey, if you have tax questions, maybe ask Joey.
As a future merchant, like the dentist, I'm a chiropractor, I'm going to start accepting Bitcoin in my office. What is the best way to incentivize people to pay in Bitcoin? Ooh. Is it like give a 10% discount if you pay in Bitcoin? What do you see as effective at transitioning people from fiat to Bitcoin?
That's one thing. I like to reverse it. I like to say a premium to pay in fiat. So you price it at $100, and you say it's $140 if you pay in. You want to show your preference. If your preference is to accept Bitcoin, but you're realistic and you understand a lot of you don't want to lose the fiat business, you can show a preference by saying, hey, this costs $130 in fiat and it's $100 in Bitcoin. That's what most people do on Zaprite.
I guess this is more specific for Wyoming, but with the University of Wyoming and the CBDI, I do think there's an opportunity to leverage that relationship there, and the University of Wyoming being a thought leader here in the state.
Oh yeah.
I think there'd be an opportunity to penetrate like local chambers of commerce at scale, and then have that immediate kind of reputation behind us, and then educate them with these Bitcoin payment options and how it can benefit their businesses. Just a
Yeah.
thought.
I'm not familiar with everything the University of Wyoming does, but I do know like Philip Treck, who works there, has been fabulous on this.
So we're actually representatives from the CBDI, so we'd be happy to talk to you about
All right,
it.
cool. All right.
This podcast is brought to you by our lead sponsor, EMRtek. EMRtek manufactures high-quality, high-powered red light therapy devices. In my opinion, red and infrared light are two of the biggest nutrient deficiencies in our modern society due to our indoor lifestyles. Red light therapy devices, like the ones from EMRtek, can help combat that by providing high-powered red light while being indoors. I personally use mine every morning and every evening. Red and near infrared light is extremely beneficial for energy production in our body because it boosts mitochondrial function and penetrates deep into the cell. It is also extremely beneficial for skin health, eye health, as well as our circadian rhythms. And this is actually pretty much why I bought everyone in my family an EMRtek red light therapy device for Christmas. EMRtek panels are low flicker, low EMF, and use targeted wavelengths such as 830 and 630 nanometers, amongst others, to get extremely effective results. For more information, go to emrtek.com and use our code DRadio10 for 10% off your order. That's emrtek.com with our code DRadio, DRADIO 10 to save at checkout.
So the question is like personal security as a business owner, like if people know that you're custodying your own Bitcoin and not using third-party intermediaries, are you worried about being kidnapped, $5 wrench attacks? By the way, with inflation, that's no $15 wrench attack. $5 wrenches are about that big; it won't hurt. No, the answer to that is multi-sig. So the way you custody Bitcoin is you take possession over private keys, right? To self-custody Bitcoin. Historically, that has been one private key that you have written down on a piece of paper on a little like flash drive looking device. And if someone were to take that from you or get access to that, they have your Bitcoin, right? It's just like holding a bar of gold. If you put it in a safe and someone attacks you and gets you to open the safe, that's their gold now. Bitcoin's wonderful when it comes to this natively. The core protocol supports something called multi-sig, which is instead of having one key that someone could get access to and then take all of your funds, you split it up over multiple keys. It's multiple private keys. This gets a little bit weird. I'm going to try to do it, right? Is that you have a private key that has a public key, and you sign the public key with your private key, and that is a transaction, right? So in a single sig situation, if someone gets one of those private keys, they can sign the public key, and they can get the money. In a multi-sig situation, you have multiple private keys. You have a situation like this. A typical one would be called 2 of 3. You would have 2 private keys. You would have 3 private keys that produce the addresses where the Bitcoin are held, and you need 2 of those private keys to sign in order to move the Bitcoin. So imagine a safe that has like 2 locks, right? Where it needs 1 key here and 1 key here in order to open, except that safe is somehow interdimensional and spread out geographically across the world, right? And so this is what I mean by like state level security for an individual for a couple $100s, right? You can buy these little devices, you can load it up on something like Unchained, you can keep one device at your office or something like that, you can keep one device in a safety deposit box or in a different state or in a different jurisdiction altogether. You can get crazy with this stuff, but like typically simple things like geographic distribution, a co-founder or lawyer or something like that takes possession of one key, you have another, and then say like a financial institution like Unchained Capital has a key. None of those parties can collude against each other because they Unchained can't take the funds because they only have one key. You need 2 keys to sign, right? So they can't move the money. Like, internally, these are good financial controls to have internally, where there's not one accountant that can go rogue and take the money. So that's already good practice in a financial control state. And then someone kidnaps you, and it's like, well, fine, you kidnap me, but I can't even move the money. Like, what am I going to do, right? You lower the incentive for people to attack you in that way, personal security wise, and you should be public about this. I use multi-sig. I'm not a target, right? Like, but that's a native quality of Bitcoin. And I would point out, like, this is not something that is native to other cryptocurrencies as well. Is that it's one of the things that drives me crazy when people make these comparisons, this beyond meat to beef type of comparison with, gobbledygook and Bitcoin, is that Bitcoin has a credible story as a store of value, as a monetary instrument, and as a 100x security posture that you can have with your money over anything. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I think to add on that, right, is bearer instruments come with physical security risk, period. Bitcoin just happens to be, an improvement upon all bearer instruments where, like Will said, it's not totally crazy that, a kidnapping could happen to somebody that doesn't have Bitcoin, right?
Oh,
like
it happens.
just if you're wealthy, and then they could force you to, take your dollars and buy Bitcoin to send it to them, right? To, in some kind of ransom. So, like, the disincentivization, I think, is ideal. But, one point I wanted to make, and I think, I work with Zaprite, like we installed their system. It was great. I prefer it. I think there's oftentimes this assumption that the dollar payment system is easy, and it's not, right? Like, as a business, doing bank wires isn't. I mean, when's the last time anybody here done a bank wire in the last 30 days? Wow, look how little hands are up, right? Because everything's like debit or credit card. As somebody that deals in 5-6 figure sales, I mean, I just had it this week where a customer initiated a bank wire on Monday, and on Wednesday they're calling the bank, and the bank's not sure if there's an issue. They can't, the first person couldn't find the wire, right? Had they paid with Bitcoin, it makes things so much more simple. I mean, within 10, 20 minutes, right? It's
Final settlement.
It's final settlement, right? It's in custody. I can put their order through. We can start building things. We can start ordering engines and fabricating. And so, like, as much as it may seem like trying to go into Bitcoin is the complicated move, I think, in fact, it's the opposite. I think it simplifies things to an insane degree. Certainly for higher dollar transactions, like, it makes it really easy. But beyond that, there's no, phone to pick up. There's no counterparty risk. And so,
yeah, if you think Bitcoin's complicated, just try Fiat.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Right. If you think Bitcoin's complicated, try an ACH or try a bank wire, and then have things go wrong. They hold we had it where customers' funds came in, bank held it for 90 days. I mean, that's just criminal, right? Like, that's interest free. They're loaning that money out. They're rehypothecating. So I think, there's really something to be said about the benefits of, just peer-to-peer final settlement, a digital bearer instrument, being able to just throw somebody a chunk of gold effectively, right, and get moving.
The great Nick Szabo, one of the early sort of cypherpunk cryptographers at the beginning of the Bitcoin world, has a really, really nice line for this, which is, trusted third parties are security holes, right? We're trying to build a financial system that does not require trusting third parties, right? And I would argue that Bitcoin has achieved that.
So I run an online group called Chief Lightning Officers. We're a Telegram group that's specifically devoted to onboarding merchants to Bitcoin. Your solution has been one of them that we would love to offer. Just
Awesome.
curious your thoughts, kind of what Tristan was asking about, of how do we get merchants to onboard this? One pathway we've done with that is us in the group, and I suggest this to anybody else, if you're wanting to pay in this way, anytime you spend fiat dollars and swipe that credit card, ask the person if they're willing to accept Bitcoin for payment or Lightning for payment. And it usually opens that little door in their head of oh, wait, I can accept Bitcoin for payment. And slowly over time, we've noticed that some merchants that you frequent all the time, if you're a buyer of their product or service, they're interested in serving you. And that could open their mind to that. Curious your thoughts on that. And then the other side, that was asked about taxes earlier. The other door that's in the way is a taxable event. So if you're self-reporting, and you choose to self-report about your Bitcoin transactions, which I don't care either way, there is that semi-need to calculate that capital gain or loss. Two ways to get around that is the moment that you spend it, you repurchase the same amount, so it's a net, it's not any different.
Yeah, spend and replace.
Exactly, and Strike is one option for that, where you're actually spending somebody else's Bitcoin. So I can, like Venmo, spend US dollars in their app, and then the receiver is receiving Bitcoin, and then I also don't touch my savings, which is the Bitcoin. So yeah, just curious your thoughts on that, of those two tactics of asking merchants whether you know they're going to say no anyways, as well as giving the users more options to know that they can spend Bitcoin without actually having a taxable event.
I think it's fine, right? Like, look, businesses are in business to satisfy their customers. And if their customers demand something, good businesses usually follow through with that, right? If enough people want to pay in Bitcoin, they'll do it. I have seen a lot of this, though. And like my personal opinion is that we should be doing that. But the more effective mechanism is to take whatever you're doing and ask to be paid in Bitcoin. Right? That has a bigger effect, right? Is that, I've seen a higher conversion rate, let's say, with that, flipping that mechanism there. When it comes to the taxes stuff, I agree, right? You can spend and replace, you can do things to avoid it. It's annoying that it's like this right now. I would say that there are, I just talk shit about all the federal stuff, but I will say that like there are some plans in the work to have like a de minimis, spending amount where anything under, whatever that number ends up being, $2,500, $1,000, that any spending of that would not be a taxable event under those limits, which especially for, most normal types of e-commerce and things like that, most of those transactions are under, say, $2,000 or something like that, and that would not be a taxable event. But we do need federal license to do that. I will say there is a candidate running right now for president that would help us push that through. What's that? Nope, Trump.
I think just
JFK Jr. might also, like, he's been open to it, but Trump's been explicit about it very recently, actually. Turned on a dime.
I just want to add it quickly. The reverse psychology there is true, where if you are a merchant who's accepting Bitcoin and you put like a Bitcoin preferred or the discount, I've done that at farmers markets. Like, it's a great way to get people curious from the consumer side. But then also, if you're a consumer going to farmers markets or just like a place where people are selling, just ask them, do you take Bitcoin? They're like, no, but should I? Like, maybe I should. And if 10 people ask them in the span of 2 weeks, they might look into it. So I think something that everyone can do here in their local community is start to plant these little seeds, and that's how we accelerate adoption a bit further.
But also just not having unrealistic expectations. Like, it's going to take a while to detox from the poison that is fiat, that has infected all of our businesses and personal bank accounts, right? It takes a while, right? So, like, don't go in there thinking that if I accept Bitcoin, that all of a sudden that's going to be 50% of my sales. It won't be. It just won't. Like, unless maybe you're Tristan and like that's part of the, like, your entire identity as a merchant. But I'm guessing even your sales probably aren't 50% Bitcoin. Probably not even close, right? And so it will take time. But even if you're getting 5 or 10 or 15% of it, I'm telling you, it does build brand affinity. Like, the people that buy from you, that buy with Bitcoin, right now, there's a moment right now where that'll build brand affinity. And number 2 is you're strengthening your balance sheet a little bit at a time.
I would say for this conference, it was like 30 to 40%. So that's really good. That's right. And we use Zaprite. So, all right, we'll take maybe 1 or 2 questions and then wrap up. Sorry.
Thanks. Just as a personal anecdote, I'm in Denver with Joey over there, and the merchants accepting Bitcoin, I've kind of taken it upon myself to go around all the taco trucks, mark them on the map, and most of them, I mean, I asked a lot of them, would you accept Bitcoin? And the first question, I don't even know what that is. Like, I don't know how to accept it. But after, 5-minute conversation, turns into, the negatives of fiat.
The history of money.
Yeah. And they end up, taking their phone out and just downloading the app and right there on the spot, So I've come to see that it's the local owners, the small shops, barbers. I've had success with barbers.
I pay my barber in Bitcoin.
Yeah. So, if anyone is, locally dealing with shops, it tends to be that it's the owner operators who
absolutely
who can make
they can just make a decision in 10
minutes.
minutes and all of a sudden they're taking Bitcoin. Yeah. If you want to pay for your Dell computer in Bitcoin, that's going to take a bit. Yeah.
What is the best app or map to look up Bitcoin merchants? I know there's a few.
Oh, I forget all the names.
Cody? What is it? Okay, btcmap.org.
Is excellent. Yeah.
Yeah, that's gonna take a while. Maybe the Orange Pill app is always a good way.
Orange Pill app is nice. Yeah, there's some ways to do that, but it sounds quaint, but like those types of discussions do matter. Like I said, it's a series of individual decisions, and then a couple years later, your entire downtown is taking Bitcoin. I mean, it's just the way it works. Like there's no way to circumvent that.
I would say recently being in Costa Rica in the Bitcoin jungle, this is another great case study and example. Anyone who's gone to Costa Rica, highly recommend checking it out. They've gotten to the point where like they're in a much better financial situation because they've been accepting Bitcoin for payment. And it's something that merchants often think about is, oh, my cash flow restrictions, I'm probably just going to have to convert this into fiat, into US dollars immediately, which is fine. But if you can slowly, say, start with like 5 to 10% of your Bitcoin payments or, transactions you're going to hold, and then eventually that will give you the backstop you need to have the low time preference and do the things you want to do with your business, invest in the things and areas you want to. So it's a activation energy barrier that needs to be overcome at first, but then it can really set you up for that long-term success and not push you into a place where you have to make these short-term trade-offs because of your cash flow. Jake, did you have a question back there?
Yeah. So the way Zaprite works with that is that you can either denominate your invoice in USD or in Bitcoin, right? So if it's denominated in Bitcoin, it's just denominated in Bitcoin, so the price fluctuation doesn't really, and they're paying in Bitcoin. Now, most people denominate in USD, and then they give a Bitcoin paying option. When they pay, right, is the conversion rate, right? So like what they'll get is they'll get an email with a PDF, and a nice thing, it has a little QR code to go to an online link that says pay with Bitcoin, right? It's going to calculate the exchange rate at the time of payment, not when it was issued or anything like that. So like you can get around that. You're just not affected by it, right? Like if you issue it and Bitcoin's $100 and it goes up to $200, then it's just going to show $100. You're going to get less Bitcoin. But if it goes down, then you're going to get more Bitcoin. Yeah, you could do that if you want a specific amount of Bitcoin. You can do that to denominate in Bitcoin, and if it's 0.1 Bitcoin, doesn't matter when they pay it. It's going to be 0.1 Bitcoin. Again, like we're trying to be realistic. Most of these, unless you've pre-negotiated for it to be paid in Bitcoin, I would still advise you to denominate in USD so you're not seen as like a psycho. But maybe you want to be a psycho. I mean, I am. So yeah.
Amazing. All right, Will. Thank you so much.
Are we ready for my third? No.
All right. Next, there's some water in the back as well for anyone. I know Wyoming sun is pretty strong, but we're going to get right into our regenerative ag panel with AJ Richards and RC Carter. So you guys can come up and we're going to set up. So it'll be like 2-3 minutes, but we'll get right into it.